seeing are these robots reactively just going blah all the time. That's all I see these days. It's getting quite nihilistic, actually. Walking
Yeah.
around at the moment,
You are
particularly
getting
after.
nihilistic.
No, there's anything wrong with it, but it also it's interesting when you see it in yourself too, right? So okay, we're giving these guys a hard time, but we do it as well, and yeah, just the amount of effort that you have to put into even just a little bit of change is, it's something else. That's for sure. I mean, just sitting on a. I was just going to say quickly, sitting on a Zafu for 10 hours a day, you're just assaulted. You're assaulted by everything, and you're just going, shit. This is what's normally happening. Like, and I'm just stopped now, so I'm just seeing it all come up. But fuck me, like so we are out of control.
So for people, if people are listening to this, Alex has just been on. You've been staring at a wall for the last 7 days. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you've been why have you been staring at a wall, and what got you into first staring at walls as a hobby?
Well, I caught myself at a young age drooling and staring at a wall. So I thought, why not formalize it? No, I practice Soto Zen. I've been learning from one guy for a very long time now, and part of Soto Zen, even as a lay practitioner, I guess you could say, is that you go on extended retreats, or you don't have to, but a lot of people do, as a way to deepen your practice. And there's really two reasons that you do it. The first reason is because you want to see what's going wrong, and if you do it for 40 minutes a day or 2 20-minute sessions, it's not necessarily obvious. But if you sit there for 10 hours a day, then what you're doing wrong, really fucking becomes obvious. And the other reason,
to tie it back to what we just were talking about, is so instead of seeing all the mad reactivity and annoying things on the internet and on Twitter or whatever, when you're sitting in a cushion for 10 hours on your own, you begin to see your own shit over and over, and how it's all just happening to you at a deeper, more basic level that is also happening to everybody else before they even get to Twitter and start reacting on Twitter.
Yeah, we got no idea. So and just quickly, the other reason is because you want to deepen your practice, and you get into deeper states doing it for that long. But yeah, that's what becomes obvious to you. And when people get real pissy when I say that we are essentially selfless, like this reactivity that we internalize and we call a self, because that's what we think of the self. That's what it is. People get the shits with that because it's one of their most dearly held things. But if you do sit down for that long, then you notice really what that is, what that sense of self is. And mostly it is reaction. There's not even really a continuity of self there. There's similar patterns, similar ways of doing things, obviously. But the way we think of a self is this constant, stable thing that lives in a bubble beyond or beyond, outside of space and time, and pulls levers and makes us act in space and time. That's a complete fantasy, just a complete and utter fantasy. And if you spend a bit of time in seated meditation, that becomes immediately obvious. In particular, like what I mean by that is, okay, so you'll sit down on the couch, you'll have all sorts of thoughts come up about what you were doing before, about what's going to happen in the future. So temporal notions, I guess you could say, things that we're thinking about in terms of past, present, and future. You will be assailed by this, you're not making it happen. It's just coming at you from somewhere, just going bang, 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 like just within the scope of your awareness. It's coming out everywhere. And then on top of that, you have sensations and emotions. You have emotional states. You have feelings. You are being assaulted by things that are absolutely not generated by what you consider yourself to be. And this is the big thing. So you're not making any of this shit happen. You're reacting to it, or you're grabbing a hold of it. And in the act of grabbing a hold of it, then you create this illusion that it's you doing the thing. And that's what most of us mistake for self. But it also means that because this is what's happening, you're not generating any of this, and all of this stuff is just happening beneath the surface of what is in your conscious purview. And that's not immediately obvious to most people because they never sit down and look at it, which is what mindfulness is. Like, you're just sitting there going, this is what's happening. These are the patterns that I'm noticing. So then, of course, yeah, you have, it'll be like, I thought of stuff that I'd never thought since the thing happened, from like when I was 5 years old, like things that just come up. Like, so you'll be sitting there and like, you'll be in a good pattern of concentration doing your method. And then bang, like this fucking thought will come up, usually associated with a feeling. So the feeling or the sensation typically comes up first. So it could be a feeling of heat or, some weird sensation. And like, it'll just be a memory from like, I don't know, this time you punched a kid in the playground when you were 3 or something. You're like, what is the point of thinking of this? Why is this coming up? It's totally bizarre. So where is that coming from? Why is that coming up? I didn't fucking think of that. So typically we'd say, well, this is what I thought of. I just remembered this. That's nonsense. It just came up and you've just done what you've done with it. So all these things are happening to you. And, it's incredible the extent to which this occurs, the reactivity. And this is true reactivity. Of course, the other element to it is when you're sitting and you have pain. This is another physiological element, I think, of sitting. So, people sitting still, and we can get to this in a little bit more detail later, but when you sit still for a long time, you have all these aches and pains that come up. And probably because I've been working a lot and I haven't been on really focusing on my posture and the integrity of my body all that much lately, I got this incredible bout of pain in my traps. And I think it could be something to do with the posture work as well, stretching muscle out and stuff like that. But so it was searing. It was a searing nerve pain, and it wasn't there immediately. It only came up maybe after a couple of 40-minute sessions on the first day, and then it just was unbearable. And in Zen, you've got to sit still. That's the whole thing, sitting still and not moving. And this pain just got worse and worse and worse, as it does, as anyone who's done a retreat will tell you. And every fiber in your being is telling you that I need to move. I need to, move out of this position because that's what's causing the pain, this position. And it just intensifies the pain. Along with the pain, you have all sorts of feelings in the body. You have thoughts that come up because of the pain, and it totally destroys your ability to concentrate. That is until you turn your attention around onto the pain. So you ignore the drive towards reactivity. You turn your attention towards the pain and you just look at it. And what's very interesting about pain in particular in Zen meditation, and probably this is the case all the time, is when you look at it. So when I started to really focus on the nerve pain, I'd kind of watch it. And first of all, what you notice is it's not stable. So it's constantly moving. So it feels like the pain is in one area and it's constantly moving around. So you'll feel like one little, I guess, a fiber fire up, and then it'll move to another bit, then it'll move to another bit within that area. And it's impermanent in that sense, right? So it's like everything else. It's just flashing into existence, then it's passing away again. The other thing about pain is like, what is pain? So you can ask yourself the question, what is the thing that is experiencing pain? What is the thing that's experiencing pain? What what even is the pain? How do I know that pain hurts? Like, what is hurt? What makes pain hurt? And the answer I came to is makes pain hurt is your reaction to pain. Because the funny thing is, when you don't react to it and you just watch it, guess what happens? It just fucking goes away. So as soon as I got to that point, I hadn't moved at all, and I did this exercise of just watching it. It just went, and I didn't have it for the rest of the time. Now, if you think about it, nothing had changed physiologically. There's no reason why the pain should have gone away. It should still be there. But it was something about sitting there and react. It wants you to react. Everything in your body wants you to react all the time. It is just this. It is this process that requires reactivity, and that reactivity is not within your purview, your conscious purview, and it's not in your under your control in any way. And when you do Zen sitting, you're short circuiting that process, and you're trying to become aware of these patterns and processes. So then you can develop a little bit of free will, a little bit of ability to become aware and to stop things and have that flexibility of behavior. But that, I really mean it, that reactivity is the real demon. I've got people on Twitter, they're like, oh, fucking demons, bro. You fucking demons, man. See, it's demonic. Reaction is the real demon. I'm telling you, that's the thing that makes everyone's lives shit. It's for sure, it's how we survive. It's not bad in and of itself. But in a complex civilization where we just have all these inputs, like it's so complex, the amount of information that we're bombarded with, and this feedback mechanism that takes the information, that determines more of the sense data that comes in and how it's reacted to, and it's this fucking circle of madness. And it's no wonder everything is so fucked up. So these days, I don't see much of what ails humanity in terms of like a moral crisis or the wrong system or anything like that. I see us as a fairly primitive hominid with a complete inability to focus, that is highly reactive, with little or no control over changing what its reactions are. And the way we are now is really just par for the course. It's just the way we are. We're not really conscious in the way that we think we are. So all that becomes, quite obvious when you examine all these things that are happening that are usually outside of your conscious purview, if that makes sense. That's my little rant on what's going on.
I love it. So the demon of reactivity.
Yeah. That's what it is.
I mean, if you think about the old some of the old ideas about demons anyway, they're getting you to do, like the idea was they were encouraging people or creating mischief for people. So people were doing, immoral things or things that were bad for them or whatever, destructive things. So that's all can be classified under reacting. Automated reactions to things, letting yourself just react and do something, going along with doing something that's just a reactive behavior rather than intervening and consciously deciding not to do that and to do something else. So I mean, it is, in that way, it is the original demon. You are not. It's anti-conscious behavior. Is basically what it is.
It's just quickly on that. This is what Hyatt meant by free space time. It's through not being reactive and developing a space from which you can decide how you're going to react, or you can be above the reaction, because reactions are going to happen anyway. But you then have the space to go, well, I'm not going to react in that way. I'm going to choose, one of these 10 other ways that I could do it. Sorry, that's all I wanted to say.
The thing people are going to like, people will react to what we're just saying, and they'll say something like, "Yeah, but you can't be conscious of every single thing and do every single thing. Some things you need to do by reactions to survive, and most things are unconscious." Blah blah blah. Well, obviously, however, you didn't choose any of those things, so you don't need to keep them. I mean, some reactions are will never be conscious; they're just like part of being a biological organism on a planet. However, a whole bunch of them can be changed. You didn't choose them. Some of them are useful, some of them aren't. Some successful people are just as reactive as complete losers. They're just reacting and doing what they have to do. It just happens to be more practical and functional, their set of reactions than another person's. But you can choose which. You can consciously train yourself, and it takes time and effort and energy to change deep behavior patterns, and then you don't need they might start happening by themselves without you having to like consciously do them each time after a while. But you chose those set of reactions consciously, so they're not reactivity or reactions in the sense that we mean. Some things are you don't might some sets of reactions you have you might not want to change about yourself first. There might be other things more important to change. But what I've noticed is that a lot of the reactive behavior, and you can think of different like bad habits you have or whatever, or lack of discipline, or easily distracted, or vices you have, or addictions, or whatever it is. They seem like different things all over the place, but often it's the same route. It's just you're just instantly going along with what happens to the feelings and sensations, and then you just start the pattern up. So it's the same problem with a lot of stuff, maybe all stuff, I don't know. You have to figure out a way, which means some kind of technique to train yourself to stop reacting in some limited set of circumstances. So you can actually do a practice where, like if you're doing it in staring at a wall, there's other ways you can do this too. You eventually then you stop being so reactive to other things too, if you work on it in the right way or the right technique. And you can then follow back the chain of reactions, because usually there's like a sensation, elicits a feeling, which elicits a action to solve that feeling. You have a bad feeling, and then there's a discrepancy between what would make you feel good and what's happening that's making you feel bad. So you just have this automated behavior you do now to try and fix that, and it's usually completely dysfunctional and doesn't work for people. This is why everyone has problems. That they're just repeating the same problems without solving them because they haven't consciously come up with that solution. Sometimes if you come to these solutions, quote, when you're too young, they're wired into you half semi-permanently, that are much harder to shift. Other ones you can change. You just have to learn new concepts or a new way of understanding something, and then do something differently. And you might feel a bit bad in the beginning, but then things will change, and then that just feels normal. Other things can be very hard to shift if your set of reactions gave you a certain identity when you were young, like a way of viewing you. I'm bad. I'm like, you just treat yourself as bad. How are you going to change that? Because your entire personality is now built up about you being bad, other people good, and then all these other games you play to say that they're actually bad and I'm actually good, and all this dramas that you have in your head. And then on top of this set of reactions, then you have what you say when people speak to you, how you deal with conflict, all these things that are way downstream of your false sense of I that you developed when you were young. And this is not to mention the whole false sense of the I that people have anyway that you're working on when you do Zen meditation or one of these things.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah, we're kind of like an onion, right? Like we have so many layers, and really, for most people, almost all of that is is, other than the odd moment here or there, maybe they've drank a bit or they're talking to someone that was relevant to some of those memories, in an introspective way. Most of us have no idea what's going on most of the time. But yeah, the challenge of peeling away those layers requires an analytic ability, and very often it's good maybe to have someone that has been through that process to help you with that, because some people are very talented at just pulling you to pieces. And it's what we've been talking about. Seeing your character is impossible. You can only really infer it. But if you know someone skilled who can do that, which is what the old psychoanalysts were doing before everything got politically correct and all this sort of nonsense. Oh, you got to feel good about what you are. You got to feel good about it. It's like, no, no, you don't. Like that. That's not how you get fixed. You get fixed by someone tearing you to shreds and pointing out, this is what you're doing wrong. This is probably where it came from. And when you mix that up with body work and mindfulness and the ability to integrate that knowledge, I agree with you. I think you can go quite far. You can go quite deep, but it's not an easy process, and it requires probably a higher, I don't like the word IQ, but some kind of IQ that most people don't have and don't have any interest in having. And that's why I'm black pilled on the species. But we'll just go back quickly to how maybe this kind of situation works a little bit, because I actually put a presentation together after this this retreat, and I put it up on my Substack. It's going to be 4 videos, I think. And I've kind of, after this experience, I wanted to maybe analyze. First of all, I wanted to put together a short course on basically the only resource you'll need for mindfulness. I think with Eastern mysticism going around and all the other things, I think that actually all of that's a bunch of commie gobbledygook. Mainly it's nonsense, because you don't really need much for this to work. It's actually quite a simple process, and I wanted to reinterpret it for Westerners and for particularly people like us, bio-individual practitioners. I wanted to strip away all the nonsense and to give something just bare bones. This is what it is. This is what's going on in our language, not in this medieval Indian language. This is what's happening. And part of that was this analysis of reactivity, like what causes it. And I just wanted to maybe go through that. So I guess when you meditate, what you really notice is really all we are all up our senses. We have 5 senses, plus 6, I guess, if you want to include what's going on up top. And we receive all this sense data that comes in through our senses. And that ends up as like a sensation in the body, right? Like a sensation of the data that's coming in one way or another. This energy that's coming into our organism. And most of that is unconscious. Some will be conscious. It'll be in our conscious purview when it happens. Some senses are more obvious than others at different times. Obviously, our sense of sight is very powerful usually. And then once it's hit the body and it's become these sensations and various other things, I think that it then the data and the sensations and it being in the unconscious and the conscious, it goes through this process of differentiation. It gets differentiated. This makes sense from a survival point of view, because you want, for example, you want spatial differentiation. So you want to be able to identify forms in the environment. So if you're in a Kalahari bushman and you're about to go out hunting, I guess you want to know if something's dangerous. So you want the ability to be able to spatially identify something out of the background in your environment, because it's going to confer a survival advantage to you. The other thing we do when we differentiate out this sense data, I think, is that we have this internal way of doing it, in the sense that we temporarily analyze the situation. So it's like we have these planning abilities. So we look into the future. So we take this data and then we can use it to go and plan. Of course, in the present, are there any present things that I need to be worried about? Or, of course, in the past. So something happened in the past. That thing didn't go particularly well. So I'm going to then think about it and conceptualize it and use it in this way. And I think you could roughly classify these things as differentiation, differentiating out and passing out that sense data. And then, of course, the next step that's kind of built on top of that, and these fundamental things that are happening that I've just been talking about, I think that they're the bit that we pretty much miss. And those are the things that are dictating the next step, the next bit of stuff that's going to be going on. And you can see, like, it's useful. All of these things are useful from a survival point of view. These are adaptations, and they worked in a primordial environment. That's why we're all still here in such huge numbers. There's nothing inherently wrong with any of this. There's nothing inherently wrong with reaction. So once we've differentiated out these things, we have the spatial differentiation, which is the visual stuff, forms, so table, light, car, lion, fucking gorilla, whatever it is. Then internal, it's like, okay, I'm hungry, so I'm going to go and plan to eat that gorilla in the future, and this is what I need to do. We have that differentiation and the planning ability. The next step is the reaction. So the reaction to the differentiation. So we've differentiated the form of the dangerous animal out of the jungle. The next step is the reaction. How are we going to react to it? There's really two ways that we react. Well, three ways. If you think about it, there's three ways. The first way we react is that we're neutral. So whatever this information is, doesn't matter. I don't care about it. It could be a tree blowing in the wind. It doesn't matter to me. The other thing that we do is we're attracted to it. So that looks good. There's a bee's nest and I can get honey from it. Or we're averse to it. We have an aversion to it, which means that it's not good. There's a tiger, I'm going to run away, an aversion. That's the reactive process to the differentiation that goes on beneath our conscious purview. I would make the argument personally that the reaction part, so the attraction or aversion, this discriminatory function, because that's what you're doing. You're discriminating between the bits of data that have come from the differentiation part. I would argue that that part is mostly unconscious as well. Certainly, I think that it is in myself, and when I look at other people, I'm certain that it is. So because we live in such a complex situation with so much sense data and so many bizarre ways in which we've been taught to differentiate things, like cultural ways from experience. You can just imagine with humans how complex this is, right? Like there's so much going on, plus of our natural genetic proclivities to this. The stuff that comes up and the way that we react to it is nuts. Like it's really nuts for most of us. Like we're just not good at handling all this stuff that's going on. And that's where you get this reaction. And the reaction is usually an attraction or an aversion to something. And in many ways, what really struck me was this is the core of the Buddha's message. It often gets misconstrued, particularly, the statement that life is suffering. I know you've probably heard that one. And this word in Buddhism is dukkha, which is Pali, and it doesn't actually translate to suffering. This is a big thing that the esoteric geniuses on Twitter get wrong constantly. When they're having a go at Buddhism, they're like, oh, he's scared of suffering, man. Not like me. I'm the Nietzschean overman, bro. I'm not scared of suffering. But that's not the point the Buddha's making. And only a midwit thinks this. What the Buddha's saying is exactly what I've been saying. So he's saying that dukkha is the feeling of unsatisfactoriness about something, which are, if you think about it, are the reactions that we have towards the things that are going on, like outside of our conscious purview. And what I mean by that is responses that rise up within us. We have this reactivity, which are these responses that rise up within us when we're denied things that we want. That's the first one. Or the second one is when we're forced to endure things we don't want. That's what the Buddha is describing. He's describing the feeling of dissatisfaction that arises from those two things. And that's what reactivity is in essence. It's the reaction we have. Let's think about that when we're denied things we want or forced to endure things we don't want. That's what he meant by suffering. And when you sit in a formal meditation session, this is essentially what you're trying to master and overcome. So an example of this would be if I go on a hike, I leave a bottle of water in the car, and I'm thirsty. Well, I'm denied something I want, and I'm forced to endure something that I don't want, being in this situation where I don't have water and I'm thirsty. So it doesn't need to be this great, like, oh man, like he just doesn't want to self-overcome, dude. Like it doesn't have to be like that. What he's describing is just a basic psychological fact. It can be larger scale. So it can be like, emotional issues or not wanting to go out and confront the world. But why that's wrong is because the suggestion is, therefore, when your mindfulness, when you practice mindfulness and you become aware of these creativities and these chains of reactivity, then you notice these patterns, and then you gain wisdom out of it, to steal from his kind of language. You gain the wisdom because you notice what's going on, and then you no longer react in the way that you used to react to something, or you gain some power over the reaction, which is normally for most humans, they're like slugs getting prodded with a soldering iron or something. Like they're not really, they're at no point to really control themselves to that degree. So the Buddha's suggesting sitting because that's the way that you can do it. That's one way that you can overcome reactivity and therefore overcome, quote unquote, suffering. Is that word again? It's just because of a word people get the whole thing wrong. So that in a nutshell is kind of what I think is going on underneath the bonnet. And this is why people don't have any free will whatsoever. It's a fucking ridiculous concept. And as you were saying before, even if you're functioning well in the environment, so just by accident, because that's what it is, it's just accident. You had good parents, good genes, whatever it is, that you're, and you're in the right situation as well, which is accident, and you're going well at life, doesn't really matter. You're still a reactive human. You're just in a different situation than someone that was born to a drug addict or something, You're both the same system. It's just one by circumstance was lucky to inherit the things that they did. So I think the real power from these methods comes from taking away the chance and living life on your own terms. It's what Dr. Hyatt used to say. You start living and you're not lived anymore.
It can prove to be a little embarrassing sometimes. Witness the two fellas you're about to meet. Their names are Santo and Johnny. Now, they're brothers. Now, yes, now, by Jiminy. Strap yourselves in now, ladies. Just a minute. No, but the story of this song is very interesting because it happened at 2 o'clock in the morning. This is a true thing. One brother woke the other brother and said, I have an idea for a song. He said, oh, come on. 2 o'clock in the morning. They got up. They lived in a two-family house in Brooklyn. And they must have very understanding neighbors because they got up at 2 o'clock in the morning and they wrote this song, and it turned into a very, very big hit. It's a thing called Sleepwalk. Ladies and gentlemen, Santo and Johnny. That's a pretty thing. It's called Sleepwalk.
It's about living consciously in a self-directed and self-defined way. And that's why I do think that mindfulness is useful even for people who are not Buddhists. Because as you can see in the language I just used, there's nothing particularly mystical or, like enlightenment, go and live in a fucking cave or whatever. Any old dickhead can use this. Any old dickhead can use this because it just gives you power over reactivity. Of course, there is a religious element. So if you want to go balls to the wall and seek enlightenment or something, then yeah, sure, that's a different matter. But I guess in the way I'm describing it, it's not. There's nothing particularly mystical about it. And in many ways, I really feel the Buddha was like this proto psychiatrist / physiologist. Like when you really look at what he suggests, particularly in light of your experience with his method, like, this guy's fucking incredible. Like, he figured this out 2,500 years ago. Like, people still haven't got to the same level of sophistication that he did, to be blunt, particularly in his analysis, which is just cold, like just bang on analysis. I've never read one as good. Maybe Nietzsche, he comes close, but yeah, anyway, that's my rant. Sorry. I hope that made sense, because I just realized I've been talking for fucking 20 minutes straight. So I hope that, I hope it wasn't
it's good.
out of
So
control.
so like, if you mentioned what you earlier about, what you think of as you, before you start doing this stuff,
Yeah.
is in itself just a set of reactions. So you
Yeah,
have like a
yeah,
reactive feeling
yeah.
and sensation, and then you have a feeling of yourself, a sensation of you that's aware of this sensation that you just noticed in your hand or whatever. All these things just react one after another. And there's a certain collection of reactions, a sort of constellation of sensations and feelings and internal dialogue and all these things that you just label as you, as me, as just that's the feeling of me. And then when you start doing either this, where you start seeing the different parts that you start, what's the right word? It's untangling the different sensations and separating them out, differentiating between them, and then you realize that, oh, there wasn't this thing that I thought was me, this fixed thing that I thought was me was actually just this process of all these different sensations and feelings. There's a kind of pattern, and that's what I assumed it was. And now I'm picking it apart. Fuck, there's nothing left. Well, there is something left, but it's not what you think. Or this is the way people talk about it. You can either go down the no self route, or you can say true self. It doesn't really make any difference. It's not the self that you thought was yourself that's left.
Exactly.
And you, by picking that apart, then you, because it's such a basic level of your existence, your awareness, that the other types of not reacting come easier then. So you find it easier not to just react to someone annoying you in the same way as you would before, like someone that you argue with all the time, or a certain situation that drives you to drink alcohol or whatever it is. You just find yourself not doing it anymore because those larger social reactions were built on top of this, these lower these more basic reactions of I, it, me, world. When you start picking apart that, the foundation for a lot of your human bullshit just falls away, which is good. But in the process of that happening, sometimes it makes people feel like they're going mad because they are breaking apart in many ways. And if you're trying to cling on to that little step, if you're trying to make the changes and do the work while holding on to the old original constellation of reactions that feel like you, me, I, then you'll suffer a lot. You'll suffer much more than you need to. And yeah, that was a big aha for me when I was reading about Buddhism a while ago. Was the like you mentioned there, the real translation is unsatisfactoriness, not suffering. So like that's just somebody translated as that, and then everyone just went along with it. And I mean, even Nietzsche had a misunderstanding of Buddhism also.
And Spengler did it too. I think that they both got it wrong.
There's only limited people didn't know that much about it then, really.
Yeah.
And
justifiably, I'm not criticizing. It's just the information they had at the time. Yeah.
And yeah, like the Buddhist stuff. I mean, it is like with the Buddhist own stuff. It is really like hardcore, practical, empirical, and like so like when you read like I can't say this, what's the name of the Maha thing? Mahasatipatthana.
Mahasatipatthana.
So when you read that, it's like this does not belong to me. This does not belong to me. This I am not. This is not my ego. But every single little thing that you experience, that's like way just the opposite of going into dramas about hierarchies of deities and all. Like none of that stuff. It's just like what is happening right now, and what is the relationship between what you think of as you and what you think of as it happening to you. And then by looking at that long enough, your old constellation of reactions changes or becomes something bigger. Even that's not the right way to say it. It's you kind of I don't know what happened to me. It was like a flipping. I like flipped inside out. It's the only way to say it. There was like what I thought of was me was spatially was like in my head, in the middle of my head, curled up. I didn't realize how curled up and tightened like a ball it was until after it went away. But there was this little eye inside my head, and there was like a feeling in the chest, a kind of tight sensations in the chest, which later I realized I unpicked was like a sort of panic. And it was like a sort of panic feeling, but I didn't know it was a panic feeling. So there was the panic feeling combined with a little voice, me, I am, where the voice is happening inside me, and it seemed to be in behind my eyes and in my head, and that was the main thing in my existence, was that, and this is what it is for most people if they don't practice, I think. And then there's the world outside, which isn't really the main thing. It was like I'm the big thing, the me and the voice, and this is like this, you can call it the ego or whatever. So that was going on, and then when doing all this type of practices, it's not then I was doing, but a mix of other stuff. It just kind of flipped for me, and that the main thing was now the world and outside, and then that feeling of me was just a little thing inside now. So it was like they just swapped places, but there's still the sensation, the constellation of reactions and sensations appear that like is more or less me, but it's nothing like that me before, which seemed to be the center of everything. Now it's like my awareness is much more outside me now. It's like, and things are where they are. Like I'm looking at a green hedge just now in the back garden. It's there. Whereas before I'm in my head going, I'm me, there's a hedge, I'm me, there's a hedge. There's none of that now. It's just the hedge. And now a feeling of chest in the chest, me. It's just all one thing happening one after another, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It is kind of reactions, but it's not the same thing. I'm not fighting it. I'm not constantly comparing what's happening with what I wish to be happening. The being forced to do things you don't want to do and not getting the thing that you do want. There's a sort of that basic levels of reaction. The basic level of reactions, once you start picking that apart, that was obviously not fuel for that, but it's more like it's the structure upon which those other things are built on, and then when you pick it apart, it just falls away. But you're not left with nobody. Yeah. You're left with. This is the debate. It's not that. Like I go in and out of whether no self is the right way to say it. I know what it means, and I know the self it's not, but. Sometimes it feels more like you're just everything rather than nothing, but that's saying the same thing. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything. It's like there's the thing that's being aware of all the reactions and sensations. The awaring thing is outside of all of the things. Even that's the wrong way to say it because it applies here, and you can't say it because it's the thing that's driving me to say these things just now. So I can't point back at it.
Yeah.
This is just like total nonsense to somebody who has
no.
When you've done it, you get what people will know what I'm talking about. It's hard to talk about.
Yeah. That's the key. So a lot of I don't want anyone to accept what I'm saying linguistically. What Kevin and I are talking about, like they're things that you can experience. They're non-linguistic, empirical, non-philosophical, non-religious, basically experiences, conscious experiences, and it's very hard to elaborate them, because they're not. Language is very poor in doing that, which is, it's funny too because language will cause. Many of your problems in trying to get to this place. So if you try to analyze it or explain it too much, that's just going to get in the way of even being able to get to the place. But I would say this: so we're looking at it now. So you're saying that your mind was basically differentiating things. So it had this, I guess, what you call a soup of data. So a soup of data, which was Hedge, Kevin, and all the sensory stuff that goes into creating that perceived impression. And then that was turned into a conceptual set of things. So there was the Hedge, there was Kevin behind the eyes with the contracted Sirius forehead, where all the
That's
energy's
him.
bound up, because
That's him.
that's the
He's-
self, isn't it?
And
Yeah.
the new Kevin has the lines in his forehead to prove that
Yeah.
the old Kevin
He tried to
had
get
the
a-
serious face, serious forehead.
Yeah, and then the interesting thing about this process of differentiation, the same process where you pull a lion out of the background for a survival purpose, that's also what I believe creates the duality that people talk about, and non-duality. So you've got this thing, Kevin in the hedge, and now you've just got hedge. So most people have Kevin in the hedge because that's the process of differentiation that's going on all the time, which leads to this, the subject object dichotomy, which people always talk about. And you get these dual differences. So, life and death, everything else and me. And of course, the most pervasive differentiation is myself or my soul. The soul is a good one. That's going to piss people off, as distinct from everything else. But of course, that's just something that the organism does as a survival adaptation. It doesn't mean that that's the actual reality of what the thing is, of what the situation is. And that's important. So when we talk about the self going away or changing in what it is, so that reactive self, it's because you've got a handle on this differentiation mechanism in the brain. So you're no longer a contracted self inside, and then there's everything else outside. Through meditation, you've realized the limitations of these differentiations and these objectified things that you've created in your mind, because that's what the self is. It's no different to passing, differentiating something in the environment. It's the same process. It's all the same process. Part of what meditation does when you get to a higher level, which is what Kevin's describing, is that that thing goes away, and the subject and object barrier, which is a bit of an illusion. It's not real, not completely objectively real. It's a useful tool, but it's not real. It's not the real situation. That goes away, and then there is a non-dual presence. Now, you might be able to call that a self. I don't like it though, because there's too many connotations about what that is, a self. I've thought about words you could use. Maybe you could say the total organism in space or something. I mean, honestly, I don't know how you'd say it, but
yeah, but
even
the
me
space
is completely unsatisfactory.
Even the word space is problematic in this.
Yeah, it's
space.
wrong.
Space seems to appear and disappear as well. It can feel like a expand, contract kind of thing. It doesn't like in terms of the practice of it.
Sure.
And then what
you
the
could call it
relationship
awareness. Awareness
Yeah.
is what it's usually referred to as, I guess, isn't it? Awareness, or you could there's words in Buddhist philosophy, like in the Zen tradition, they call it the original face. They call it the unborn. It's something, but whatever it is, it's not that contracted reactive self. And because the reactions that we have before we do any of this work are so familiar, they happen all the time in the same way, then that gives us this feeling of continuity. And that continuity is the thing that people get really angry about me and you disputing that it's actually a thing. And it's not until you break down the wrongful perception of continuity, because continuity is not a thing either. Things are always changing. Even if you have entrenched patterns that are very regular, that even they on some level are not continuous. And when all these things start to break down, then it becomes obvious what we're talking about, how there's no continuous me in here and everything else out there in the same way that we tend to think. So yeah, anyway, that just my feelings.
Yeah, the
yeah.
continuous, yeah, the feeling or the perspective I have, or the way of talking about now, the continuous aspect to it is more like everyone has their own kind of stream of experiences. There's like separate. You're having one stream of experiences. I'm having one here. There's a continuity in that sense that like somebody else's hedge experience is not just suddenly intruding on mine. But it's not like there's no like you separate from this that's sitting watching going, I'm here watching, unless you do techniques to build up one of those. But it's not in the same way as the one you habitually think, or the one that you're kind of everyone just, or most people, at least nowadays, are born with, or not, maybe not born with, but develop, and which is the reason why everyone's driven to do all these techniques and chase awakening and those type of things. I mean, like in the Buddhist and the Indian tradition, it's like awakening makes sense as a metaphor, because you're there, like it's a dream. Your understanding of yourself is like a dream. You think you're this you, but really you're just dreaming this separate you, and it's not there. And then you wake up from the dream. You could have there's different metaphors. Enlightenment is a slightly different metaphor because you're, darkness to light. But again, that's similar to sleeping to waking. But you, like before doing all this, any kind of practices, I had this kind of vague idea that when they're talking about awakening and enlightenment, it's like there's still you here now, but then you explode out into this bigger realm with all this other stuff, and it's like you're going to see all this more stuff than is here. But actually, what happens is you just see what's here differently, or more of what's here, or you stop seeing things that are here that aren't actually here, like you're this little continuous self that's separate from things that's watching. But really, if you just spend enough time looking at even if you think of the words I am, if you just say to yourself, I am, you have a kind of feeling when you say that I am, you kind of maybe, where's the sensations, kind of maybe in your chest. I feel my finger pointing at myself. I am, here I am. You have a lot of words are appearing somewhere, I am, but you can break all those down into the words that I am. No matter how quick I say it, there's like a little different things. It's jumping in and out of word to sensations and stuff, and I'm just calling all that I am, but really it was just a set of reactions to deciding to say the phrase I am. There's some kind of awareness that's continuous, but it's not separate from the thing it's aware of. I mean, we're stuck in language. We're stuck in the way language is, the thing. You can't really get out of it. And I think this is why a lot of people into the stuff, they'll do the vow of silence and that kind of thing, because part of what's maintaining the false idea of yourself is the structures of language. And so stopping speaking will reduce it a little bit. Not all of it.
One of the rules, just quickly, one of the rules of this session is you don't have mirrors. You can't look at a mirror. Just thought I'd add that in.
Interesting. Yeah, so you can't maintain that habit of you, this separate self identified with the body shape. Is that right?
Yeah, I think particularly the face, Yeah, because it's very much tied up.
You have a set of reactions. As soon as you see a face, your face, you have a set of reactions. I mean, your feeling of you, since mirrors have been invented, is our collection of sensations and feelings and reactions that we think of as me will be different from people who've had mirrors all their life, because it's being influenced by that or molded by that. well, first of all, it's a kind of externalized version of you, so you're already separating out, in a weird way. So I can see why they would want to ban that. That would go along with the not speaking, as ways to reduce. These are kind of amplifiers to your false self identity. So why have the amplifiers around? You're better just to not have them. And then some of the dietary restrictions is like this as well, because if you're eating certain things, you're more feeling of alive. Well, who is it that feels alive? It's your false sense of self that's more alive now. So it's even harder for you to detach from that to do the work. So that's like maybe part of the reason why they have the strict diets, to make people weak. In that sense, I'm not promoting that, and I don't do that myself. But I think that's the kind of mechanics of that, as a technique. But like everything else, that became a moralism, and it became, it became all about morals later. But really, it's probably just a hardcore technique to make something happen, to help something happen for some people, not everybody. But of course, everybody wants the rule to be for everybody. This, I've decided what's good. Everyone else has to do it too, because that's what's good is. But as far as the reactivity is, I just think in general people are better by working at this level of your reactions. Is a better thing to do than to try and fantasize and delude yourself that you're going to change your life in all these different ways. Which, what is your life? It's made up of patterns of reactions, and you're not going to change them. It's better just to go to the core of it and try and change it at the deeper level.
Yeah. You need to short circuit it somehow. And if you think about it from that point of view, sitting still for 10 hours a day is pretty much the antithesis to reactivity. Like that's like going, nah, you're not gonna react. that's like it. That's just about as unreactive as you can be, quite literally.
And your reactions will be like a little kid who's been ignored. Tugs the shirt, ignored. Tugs the shirt a bit harder. Tugs it more. It gets more and more.
Keep trying, motherfucker. Loud, keep trying.
More loud, more aggressive, more stamping the feet, and until you eventually do it, because he'll pay attention. He'll pay attention to me eventually, because he always has. So like if you're forcing yourself to sit for that long, then it's inevitable. All these things are going to come up, and that's not even including all the games, emotional games people play with themselves to avoid experiencing certain feelings that they're all going to come in too, because you've kept them all under the surface until now, because you're going about your daily business, reacting to your favorite things.
Yeah, you do play games with yourself too. Absolutely, you do everything. Boys, like I remember when I first started meditating, I'm like, how the fuck did he come up with this? Like who would have thought to sit there and just do all this stuff? And I'm like, now I think about it, it's the most obvious thing you can imagine. It's like if you're a bundle of reactions that can't sit still and is, like your movements are bound up with thoughts, and there's all this stuff going on, then it seems actually rather obvious that the way to overcome that would just be to sit still, like completely still, which is what you got to do in Zazen, and I would imagine other traditions as well, is sitting still, and then all this stuff comes up, and all these things erupt, and then you
as
see
an analogy,
where before it's not obvious to you. Yeah,
I mean, being able to stand still would have saved our ancestors' lives at one point. They see a creature and they see some kind of animal, saber-toothed tiger, say, and then you can run. Well, it'll catch you. You can fight. It'll probably beat you, unless you're good with weapons, or whatever, which people would do. But the third option would be to freeze and hope it doesn't see you, and it just carries on. So, like you're wanting to react and do something, and you're consciously inhibiting your reaction by not reacting, by not doing the things, not running or making a sound or whatever, even though a whole bunch of you wants to do that. So by inhibiting that, then you might have saved your life. So that you're getting a little bit more conscious every time you do that. Maybe our ancestors who were better able to do that were the ones that survived. That may be for all we know, that was something like that was the difference between the ones that survived and the ones that didn't. The Ice Age or whatever.
Well, actually, that is a theory.
Wasn't that many people.
Just quickly on that is a theory that they are considering seriously for the development of self-referential consciousness was actually pausing. The first hominid that paused. So you're right, and it was in the Adam Gazzaley book, The Distracted Mind, that I
okay. Well,
so it's a serious theory. Yeah.
Oh, good to look up. So because what you're saying there about the reacting in the meditation framework then is it's just that skill taken to the next level, basically. So you're surviving as the quote lower biological organism by not being eaten by the tiger, but you're still just being lived by all the reactions that are built into you by genetics, early upbringing, environment, language, whatever. But then later you by making yourself sit still when you don't have to, you're now making a choice. You're intervening in your other reactions, because no one wants to sit down and meditate for 20 minutes. They always want to do something else. Like when they're starting, they always want to do something else. You have to go against reactions in order to start practicing going against reactions. It's already against you right at the start. And then you get more control of yourself. You're able to inhibit things. You're able to make yourself do something that you might not want to do. Then this gets into who's the one making you doing that? Is that another reaction? Well, it might be. Maybe that you only get into meditation because you want to impress a girl. This is true for many guys. Or you think it's you want to be around the girls or the whoever, maybe it's yoga or whatever. So you might get into some kind of self-work through pure reactions, but then by doing the work, then you start to break apart the reactions, and then you actually make real progress. So I don't have a moralistic problem with why people get into things. It can be some kind of self-serving, selfish vice. But if someone starts doing the work, who cares what the reason was they started? So as far as our ancestors, they had to develop this to survive. And then later, at some point, all the different traditions, at some point, they seem to have some kind of techniques and practices and traditions where people intentionally force themselves to sit still or be silent or do very specific things with their body that are against their surface reactions in order to have more power over the reactions and to have a little bit more freedom. It doesn't mean you have total free will. It just means you're not restricted to one reaction to every event. You can now maybe do 3 things in that situation, or you can not do anything in that situation, which again is pausing. And then that opens you in a new situation. Now you can do more things in this new situation and so on. So it just seems like it's a natural, the quote spiritual angle of it just seems like a natural development of the quote physical part of it.
I think you just figured it out.
Yeah, it's just like a spectrum kind of thing. Although, as someone said on Twitter the other day, spectrum, it's just, people just say spectrum when they don't know what they're talking about. So they hope everything just gets covered. Everything I say gets covered in their spectrum. But I think the two things are, I don't think everything was just physical and then we became spiritual later. I think the two things are, the two ways of looking at it have always been intertwined, and the expressions would be different. But anyway, from normal human thinking about history, normal Western modern person thinking about history, it's useful to think in terms of that everything higher comes from something lower, or even that's the wrong way to say it, but it's like you can't separate the spiritual and the physical, the psychological and the physical, the mind body, all these things. The whole idea of the mind body split, by doing something like the Zen meditation, you're unraveling that split. It's not that you're joining them back together, because to join them back together is also the wrong way to think about it. It's like, because there isn't the two separate things that need stitched together in that way.
Yeah, they're already there. You're already noticing what's there. That's it. Yeah.
So talking about it, on one level, you can't talk about it because it's non-verbal, it's beyond words, and language by design, let's call it, is for distinguishing things and separating things. So that's what it's for. Like words mean one thing, not something else, or at least they used to. So you're not going to use that to put things back together. However, you can sort of unfold if you're doing practices and experiences, you can kind of unfold what's happening into language as long as you go back to the reality again after. And the reality is just, at the basic level, is just sensations, different types of sensations. There really isn't.
Yeah.
In the middle, you go from the sensations and the experience of what's happening around you to all concepts and stuff, which are really just designed to help you reorganize and have better set of sensations. So in one sense, really all this practice and meditation is really just because you're unhappy with the current constellation of reactions and sensations you're having, something unsatisfying about it in general, and you're driven to use concepts and ideas and practices to try and reorganize it. And then one day you're just like, oh, it's different now. And you have a different view of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then you can get all excited and call it enlightenment if you want, or you can just go, I was a total reactive idiot before, now I'm less bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny that, the Zen master actually mentioned the same thing during one of his speeches or sermons, I guess, whatever you want to call it. And he did say, people, don't come to this unless they feel like, often people will say, if you're in pain or, something like that, or you've got something going on, but it's also the feeling of, just something's not right. I think you're aware that something is off about the whole thing. And that's very much the reason people are driven to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Why did all these people come up with these techniques in the first place? Yeah. Like the ancient Hindu stuff, why are all these different countries, even like the African tribes now, have like the crazy dances to get out of their own mind? Like they have like all ways of transcending the human condition. Why are they doing that? Because they're not happy with the human condition. Humans aren't like other animals that just go about animaling. Humans are doing that too, but they also have this other thing that's like, you don't see, lizards releasing online courses.
No, you don't.
Not even on Gumroad. Not even Gumroad. Yeah. So there's something else going on, and it's just must be that people just weren't satisfied with the human condition.
Oh, totally.
Part of the human condition may simply be that kind of being unsatisfied, wanting to transcend itself, which is what enlightenment, quote, and awakening, quote, are. It's transcending your old conception of self. There's some debate, some people debate whether you just go through new conceptions that then need transcended of self, and it's like some people say it's never ending, other people say no, there's like an end to it. I'm not qualified and or stupid enough to try and give my opinion on this.
I'm stupid enough, if you want to hear my theory.
Yeah, go for it.
Not even remotely qualified. but